So this is, that's as simple, it's very simple to release those holds. And again, it doesn't have to be a student in your advising profile. You can find somebody that comes into your office and needs help, and you can mark them off by searching for their name. Okay, I think we'll stop there and see if we have any questions on releasing advising holds. And then we'll go over those and then move on to the next part of self-service banner.
Carol, this is Jeff Paquette. Not that I expect to have too many issues with this, but since any advisor can click off any student, are we going to be putting out any messaging on the etiquette of all of this, or is there sort of a preference? You know, if you're going to advise somebody outside of your normal list, you know, are we asking people to send a notification via email or just use the note system within Banner, or has that really been discussed much?
Carol, can I jump in really quick?
Yeah, sure.
So Jeff, that's a great question. And the thought is that nobody should really be advising students who are not within their department. Unfortunately, Banner has no way to restrict it at that level the way that AIS does. And so somebody from, let's say, the English department, they shouldn't be advising somebody from AIM. But if somebody from AIM can't get a hold of their advisor, they should be contacting CAE to get advised. And so there is a way for us to, in Banner, there is a kind of tracking where we can see who removed that advising hold from the student's record. And so if you do have concern of somebody outside of your department advising your students, we can see who actually did lift that restriction for your student.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's good.
But I think you do have a good point.
To permits as well. Are we going to have the same ability to lock individual courses kind of like we did with permits, or is that going to be different?
So Carol will be showing the permit side of things, but in a little bit, but just a little note on that. Only instructors can put permits or put what Banner calls overrides for the courses that they are the primary instructor for. The department chairs, deans, and admins, there is fine-grained access that it will be set up. So if a department chair needs to put in an override for, like in your case, something that has an ED prefix, you would be able to do that. So somebody from the nursing department would not be able to put in permits for education courses.
Perfect.
Were there other questions out there? Did you have any in the chat, Brianna?
Well, it looks like Emma. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. This is Shauna Hannenberg, and I have more of a comment from what Jeff was talking about. And the question that Emma Mitchell had in the chat kind of relates to this. If a student comes to us and they're not in our department, Emma's question is, where can we look up who their primary advisor is? I think that will come in handy, as well as being able to put notes in with what the CAE, with the success coaches, in our department, we're getting used to sharing the advising duties with them. And so being able to track, what they've done with students. And if a student comes to us and they're unclear, being able to look that up in here is going to be helpful.
So Shauna, I brought up the screen that will show you when you go to the profile page for a student, and it does list all the advisors that would be attached to a student here. Okay. So you would know, these are the people that most likely have seen this student before, or may have more information on them. But, if you wanted to give a courtesy email to them to say, hey, I just marked off your student or something, again, you guys can figure out a process of how you would want to do that. But it will, under the student profile page, list anybody that's attached to the student here.
Carol, when you place a note on a student's account, who can see that note?
The student and the advisor can both see the note and an advisor coming in. So, yeah, so you don't want to put something that you don't want the student to see.
I have a question. This is Mary Sandoval.
Uh-huh.
And under the advisors there, is that the last person who fits that profile for advisor, primary? That would be the last person who saw the person, because it wouldn't be a list of anybody, right?
The advising team has created different roles for advisors. Some are mentors, some are success coaches, some are faculty mentors. So there are different categories that they are put in. So it's not necessarily the last person that saw them. The primary one, I think, has probably seen them more or maybe initially started with them, and so their name is listed as the primary advisor.
And I do want to add on that, any student who is a new student, a readmit student, or a transfer student, there is a process that we have running in production to automatically assign their academic success coaches 1 and or 2. So based on John, myself, and Helen, we determined the logic of what that should be. So on some students, you may see that they have an academic success coach 1 and 2, but the advisors for continuing students are showing who was their last primary advisor in AIS for spring of 2021.
Okay, so we're going to go back here, and we're going to work next on our override permit process. So again, as Brianna said earlier, the only one that can do this from self-service banner would be the actual instructor for the class. So when we say department chairs and admins will have access, that will not be through self-service. That will be through the banner application where they go into a different screen and they can do override. So I'm going to click on registration overrides here. Okay, so when I come in here, the first thing that's going to ask me is what term am I trying to create a permit for. So I'm going to go in the fall term. And just like we searched earlier, I can search by their ID number or I can search by their name. So for this one, I'm going to search by name. And when I click on that, it brings up a list down below. And so I had 2 students that had the name last name. So when I pull them up on here, I can figure out which one it is that I want to create the permit for. So I'm going to click on this student. And when I come down to the bottom, it says there's no current overrides for the selected term. So I haven't given the student any permits. It's showing me the classes that they're already enrolled in. And so I'm going to click on the course that I want to give them an override for. And so there's different kinds of permits that you can give. And we need to be careful with what kind of permission we're giving. Again, you have to be the instructor to be able to give the permit but from the screen. But again, you should be careful. So I'm going to put this student in EPER 495. So this is one that is restricted, saying you have to have instructor's permission to be in my class, right? So a lot of the research classes, there's many classes that are set up this way. So I click on the course, and then I have to tell it what kind of override am I using? So for this, I'm doing an instructor override because I want to let this student into my class because I've said he is a major in the PER department and I'm going to let him in. So I click on that and I hit submit, and it tells me up here the save was successful. And so now I know that it's been added to the student part, and then the student can go and register for the class. The student would be able to just go now in to 495, add it without any problem. I'm going to go back and we're going to do a different one. See, it tells me it wants the term first. So I found a couple of different DOEs that want a permit. So the student came in and they're actually wanting to get into one of your classes, but it's saying this one I already gave a permit for BPER on this student. But maybe now they want to be in one of my other classes. So maybe they want to be in my English class, but for this student, they don't have the correct test scores for this semester. Or I can't, maybe they've taken the class, but their test scores isn't showing up. So I know the student's okay. I looked at their profile page. They're good. So I'm going to give them a prerequisite override so they can get into my English class. And so I hit submit here. And now it's saved again successfully. So this student would be able to register for my English class that was blocking them previously because there was a prerequisite. So no one, it uses the word prerequisite, that sometimes that's test scores, that it's not necessarily another course, that it could be that their test scores weren't high enough. And for the first semester, please remember, we are not enforcing co-requisites, and we are not enforcing all prerequisites. So the ones that we're trying to monitor are English and math, to make sure that we don't have students getting into things that they shouldn't be in. So our English and math teachers may be having to do some of this, especially when it comes to transfer students that maybe their scores aren't in here yet. But primarily most information should be in on a student, so you shouldn't have to do that too often. While I'm in here, I'm going to show you that there are some other fields here. So Extended Studies will be using this for their courses. And as you look at course searches, you will see some things that say ES has the section number, and those are Extended Studies courses, and they are the ones that would do those overrides. Again, you wouldn't be able to do it for every course. It would only be if you were one of their instructors. The registrar's office is only for us. Please do not use that, and we will be pulling reports, and if people are using that, you may not be able to do overrides at all anymore because we don't want you giving permission for everything. A time conflict is when a student maybe is in a class and it overlaps a few minutes or a few hours with something, but perhaps you know that your class really isn't going to meet some of those times, and so it's not an issue, and you could give them a time conflict override. But that's something you would want to discuss with the student to make sure that they're not missing too much of your class. So those are the override permits that can be done. Again, Extended Studies, you really shouldn't be touching that. That's them. Instructor would be used, prerequisite would be used, and time conflict, not registrar and not Extended Studies.